So tell us about yourself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Dr. Jessica Keene. I'm currently Assistant Professor of History here at Georgian Court University. And my area of specialization, the area of the world that I research in, is early modern British history. So, the history of Europe in particular.
So you have been abroad in Europe and like what area specifically?
So I've been to Europe many times. The first time that I went to Europe, I was actually an undergraduate, and I took a trip to Oxford, and I had the opportunity to go to Oxford and London for about a 10-day stay, and then I just got hooked. I couldn't stop going to the UK. After that 2-week trip, I did a semester abroad in Bath, England, which is a former Roman city that had Roman style baths. And so I went in, I think, 2008, 2009, and then every other year I was back in the UK. And once you are able to go to England, you're able to kind of go to many other European countries. So when I was abroad, I doing my study abroad semester, I was able to go to France. We went to Normandy. I also went to Italy and Germany and Paris. So just traveled quite extensively in Europe because once you're over there, the flights are cheap. You can get anywhere you want to go. So that's really where I started my study. My experience abroad was primarily through sort of opportunities that were available to me at my university. And then from there, a lot of the trips I began to take to go abroad were independent, especially in doing, beyond undergraduate. I had to go back to the UK quite often for research. A lot of my libraries require archival materials. So working with documents that are 500 or 600 years old, I was just, kind of so shocked that I could walk into a library and they would let me hold a letter that was by written by, a young Queen Elizabeth I, or by one of Henry VIII of Six Wives fame. I was able to hold one of their letters. I didn't feel like I had the skill set or was worthy, but it was such a cool experience. And so many of my trips have been back to the UK so that I could continue to do and engage with my research. But I've taken trips now all over the world. So I don't know if you'd like for me to talk about that as well.
I would love to know. I mean, I'm going to study abroad next semester in England, so like I would love to know your whole experience over there. That seems amazing. I know for my spring break over there, I wanted to go to different countries like France and like that, and just yours seems so similar to what I'm about to experience, so it seems really nice.
So where are you going, Sabrina?
I'm going to Twickenham, London.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, I've spent a lot of time in London. And from London, you're right, you can go pretty much anywhere. And you have the opportunity to fly into different countries in Europe, uh, Germany, Italy, Spain, Portugal, where, Greece is also accessible, which I suggest, especially after your class with me, that if you have an opportunity to go to Greece, go visit Greece. It's fabulous. And then you also have the Eurostar, which helps to connect you, by train into Belgium. If you want some great chocolate and waffles, go to Belgium. If and you can also get to France on the Eurostar. So you are going to be so connected in the city of London. And so some of the archives that I use, the British Library, the British National Archives are located in or around the city of London. So whenever I was in the UK in the first couple of weeks this semester, and it was the first time that I have been in the UK without going to London. Which was definitely a little bit different for me. I missed the opportunity of seeing this bustling city and kind of being a part of it all. But it's going to be just such a fantastic experience. And as you know, kind of getting at your other question, I I fell in love with the opportunity to, travel and go abroad. When I was an undergraduate, I was from a first generation family. My idea of going, you know, someplace outside of my, immediate worldview was like going to North Carolina or South Carolina, the next state over. And so having the opportunity to go to England in my first couple of years as an undergraduate, it really opened up my mind to show me that there's a bigger world beyond myself and the immediate sort of environs that I lived in. Sorry.
Okay.
So I ended up, from these initial trips, I went on to go to graduate school. From graduate school, I made friends and acquaintances and connections. I went to a wedding for a friend in India. That was just fantastic. So I've had the opportunity to go to Delhi. I've been to Beijing and to Shanghai and into the Hunan province and in China. It's just there's so many places that I've been. I've been to Mexico. I'd like to spend more time in Latin America. It's just I've been to Puerto Rico, like the Caribbean, the Bahamas. It's just like once you realize that there's a bigger world outside of you, you want to get out there and learn more about it.
I love
So
that. I inspired to travel as many places as you have.
I feel really fortunate because, I didn't come from a background where I thought that this kind of travel would be possible. Sorry.
It's okay.
he's he's jealous of my time. It's just, I really encourage students to take advantage of the opportunities that are in front of them. This is really the time of your life to get out there, to experience new things, to experience new cultures. That's part of the reason why I am such an advocate for global lions. Even if you can't, do things, maybe going abroad is a difficult thing for you to do, even though Laura makes it so possible for everyone to be able to do. There are opportunities like the virtual abroad programs that are here that allow you to experience these cultures while still being in New Jersey. So I think it's just fantastic.
Um, so how did the culture impact you overall of the different, cultures that you've experienced when you've been traveling?
So when I first went to the UK, I thought of the UK as being very similar to, US culture. And when you get over there, you do see, a number of similarities between British culture and American culture. And so it kind of felt like a gateway experience for me. People over there spoke English. But they had like a different way of viewing the world than we do as Americans. It's a well, at least in London, London feels a lot like New York, but once you move outside of London and you go into kind of spaces where life is moving at a bit of a slower pace, you really get to see British people living, their lives in these spaces. And so I think it was, you can go to any urban center. If you go to London, if you go to Delhi, if you go to Shanghai, or Beijing, there's this frenetic pace that kind of connects everybody together. And it's, and in that sense, each of these spaces feels so cosmopolitan and familiar. But it's when you move outside of these sort of urban spaces that you get to see, I think you really get to see sort of like what it means to be British, what it means to be Chinese, what it means to be Indian and a part of a global society. I don't know. It's the idea of realizing that I'm just one small individual person in a bigger space, and that there are people with different ideas and religious traditions and perspectives and points of view, and being able to understand that, you know, the way I grew up is not the way everybody else grew up. I don't know if that gets at the question,
Yeah.
but it's the idea of feeling small in a big world that opened up my perspective on these kinds of things.
Yeah, and then leave you to be like more open-minded to different items as well, right?
And coming from a background that was relatively closed-minded, I
Hmm.
think that was so important. I one of my big regrets, and another thing that I would encourage students to do, is take advantage of learning a second language. I loved traveling abroad in the UK, but I regret that I didn't take the opportunity to, learn another language and immerse myself in a culture that allowed me to do that long term. Usually, if I'm going into regions where, the main language is Chinese or Spanish or Portuguese or what have you, I'm definitely outed as the tourist. Like I'm the one that's speaking English. I was visiting a friend of mine who I met in graduate school. He lives in Munich, and so all of his friends speak German, and so he let everybody in the group know, oh, she's American, and then everybody immediately was able to switch to English just because of my presence.
Wow.
And I felt so, I don't know, like I just was like, what's wrong with the education that I received? Like that they could just do that and sort of speak perfect English. It's something that I'm so, like, I admire.
I mean, you studying abroad, I had no idea. And then I'm like, oh, I'm a first generation student as well. And then I'm going abroad. So it's really interesting how we like connect in ways.
And I
Um,
think I think like with Britain, it can be that great like gateway point, especially because there are so many similarities between the cultures, that you are going to be able to speak your native language. That brings a sense of comfort in a way. But in London, you're going to be, because it's such a cosmopolitan city, you're going to be exposed to people from all across Europe. You're going to have people from India, Asia, everybody, kind of gathers in London. So you'll get to be, kind of like a small moving part of this bigger whole. And that's so cool to see. And I don't know, there's something important, I think, about realizing that we're not the center of we're the center of our own universes, but we're not the center of everyone's universe.
yes, I totally agree. I relearned this about Discovery into the Universe, Gen 199, and they talked about how like um I just got a notice that it's gonna end in 10 minutes. But that it's just like us humans, we just think we're just it's us and that's it. And then we don't really realize unless we go outside of, like the US, and then we realize like there's so many of these places, there's so many other people and they all had different lives, and it's just like where it's not just all about ourselves and our own problems every day. It's like there's other things and there's different cultures out there, and you just need to be open-minded because you need to experience those things in order to grow as a person. So
And I couldn't agree with you more. And it's one of the reasons why I find teaching world history to be so impactful, is that, we get to learn about the origins of both the things that sort of bring us together as like members of this human race, but also the things that make each culture special, religious traditions, cultural traditions, food ways. We didn't even talk about food ways, but just the kinds of things that you get to experience while going abroad. Um, Even the kinds of desserts. When I came back, and I still get made fun of for this, I wouldn't say takeout. Like I want to go get some takeout Chinese. I want to go get some, like some takeout. I would say takeaway. And
uh,
my friends made so much fun of me for that. And I'm like, I was saying that for 6 months in Britain, or even like, like things that you'll just kind of inherently do, like walking on the left side of the street, moving to your left instead of moving to your right. it's just these little things that you pick up that you don't even realize that you're doing. And then you go back home and you have this sense of like, oh, this isn't how it always has been done, has it? So I will say, like, the culture shock that I had kind of returning back from the UK to the US was it was those little things that I felt more than anything. The kind of language that I would pick up, the way I would refer, to the bathroom as the loo, like I need to go to the loo. And I might have friends who would look at me oddly, but it's those little things that really sort of impacted me. But then I have colleagues who go abroad and they are experiencing, they might be thinking in a different language than the language that they grew up speaking. So it's, depending on where you go, the experience can change drastically.
Wow, I didn't think about like speaking differently in your head and then actually speaking. That's a really interesting point. So what is one of your favorite experiences abroad? Like just anything specific that really is memorable to you?
I think, I really enjoyed being able to be a part of my friend's wedding in Delhi,
Mhm.
because that was such a significant sort of event personally, and then feeling like welcomed into that culture as someone who is not a part of it. In terms of like things that I've done that are I'm gonna sort of remember for the rest of my life, climbing the Great Wall of China. Just it's kind of it was like an otherworldly experience, and
Mhm.
maybe I'm spoiled because I've been to the UK so many times at this point, but sort of getting out of Western spaces and going into places where English isn't spoken. Like in Germany, I could go and speak English. In Greece, many of the inhabitants there speak English as well, but being put out of my comfort zone in a way. Um, so I would have to say Great Wall of China is definitely up there in terms of cool things that I've done, and seeing the Taj Mahal as well. So
Wow. I have one last question for you. Just any other like input or advice for students that want to study abroad?
I would definitely reach out to Laura Grotewald. Again, I think a lot of us sort of see the barriers rather than thinking about the possibilities that you can get from going abroad. And so Laura has tried to make it so possible for GCU students to be able to go abroad. So I think use her as a resource. She even goes into, like, here are different ways that you can raise the money to, go on this faculty-led program. And there are faculty-led programs happening in the spring, happening in the summer. But I think the best kind of approach, once you get over the anxiety of being abroad, is just dive right in. Doing a semester abroad is really the best bang for your buck, and it gives you the opportunity to fully immerse yourself into a culture that isn't your own. So as somebody who did both the shorter trips and the longer one, I encourage you to, take the leap and figure, there are ways that you can make it happen for yourself. So those would be my suggestions.
Thank you so much for sharing all about your experiences. It was really interesting.
Thank you, Sabrina. I'm really excited to hear about your trip. And if you need any tips or suggestions, please don't hesitate to reach out.